Alright, so there are some really awesome looking gacha games coming out in the relatively near future. In fact, some of them have already started doing beta testing or open testing with players, so I thought it would be good to go ahead and take a look at the best looking or the most promising looking ones coming into the scene. In fact, after doing some digging, it looks like we have some potential release dates or release times as well, and so I'll include those wherever necessary. And if there's any games that you think are worth the time that I didn't put on this list, go ahead and put those down in the comments below. We're open to anything as long as it looks good. So let's take a look at these. But first, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out, and we're trying to make that push towards 10K, which will be the first milestone for the channel. Now let's take a look at a big one first. This game is called Ananta, and unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of it, but you might have not heard of its new name, which was a little bit of an odd change because people actually liked the old name, which was Project Mugen. When the initial trailer dropped, which was just put out there to see how it would be received from players, this made a big splash and everybody was excited about it. In fact, it felt like it was too good to be true. People were web-slinging like Spider-Man 2 in the trailer. It looked like a Grand Theft Auto gacha-style game, which sounds like a groundbreaking piece coming to the gacha gaming scene. But as time has gone on, the speculation that this game is not going to be able to live up to the hype basically has all washed away, because we see more and more of the gameplay, we see more and more of what's actually going to come to us, and it looks like it might actually be able to be a true contender with some of the top gacha games in the scene. We're looking at you, Hoyoverse. The environment, the world of Ananta seems probably like the most impressive thing that I can take away from the trailers and from what we've seen from the gameplay so far. It is truly impressive what they have been able to achieve, and that's really important. And that's one reason why people compare it to Grand Theft Auto, because Grand Theft Auto's world is one of the biggest spectacles of this game, with a ton of NPCs walking around just doing their own thing, whether the player is there to see it go down or not. And it seems like we're also going to get some driving elements, which I can't think of ever having in like a traditional gacha game where most of the focus is on like the story or the characters or combat, and also being able to have a driving element to it where you will be able to customize your vehicles potentially and actually drive around in cool, fun, and interesting vehicles. I think that's going to be a breath of fresh air for the gacha gaming scene. And how about the web slanging? Obviously, it's actually just a tether cord of some kind, but it really does remind us of Spider-Man 2 in a good way. That was really impressive what they were able to do, and that was a AAA game release, and we're looking at a likely free-to-play gacha game. This is going to be groundbreaking. This game has so much going for it. If they're able to deliver, this might be not a Genshin killer, but a Genshin competitor. However, it really won't be in a way, because Ananta looks like it's trying to be its own thing. It's trying to pave its own way and really make its own name in the gacha gaming scene. But let's briefly talk about what you probably care about the most. If it's not the combat or the story, it's the characters, baby. And the characters look phenomenal. And apparently, you're already able to download the models on the Ananta website. Am I seeing things here this early on before the game comes out? If they end up updating the models eventually, I really hope that they allow us to, download them again if that's the case. But let's be real here. They do openly usually say for games like this that you're supposed to be able to download the models and use them for your own artistic expression, maybe making cool dance animations and goofy stuff like that you could upload to YouTube or TikTok or whatever. But let's be real. The Rule 34 video market is going to have a big boom when a game like this comes out. Expect to see some Patreons receive some extra money the month that this game releases. Now, in trying to find out when this game could actually release, I did find out that they have a global license, which does give them enough room all the way up till December 24th, 2025 to release the game globally. That's just how it works. However, they technically could put out a global testing phase, and that would allow them to be able to get an extension, which could extend the release date into 2025. However, when I was also doing some other research trying to find out when this game could come out, for some reason on the Ananta website, I noticed some text. Hey, Captain, Ananta drops on December 5th at 10 a.m. December 5th, this game could be releasing this year. However, when I go to the Ananta site, it doesn't actually show me anything when I go there. I even tried to Control F to try to find the text that was there, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if that's an accidental leak on their part, but something's interesting is going on, and we can openly expect that this game might come out in late 2025, maybe sometime in 2026. But expect to see some beta testing before that does happen. Now, before we get into some other heavy hitters, I wanted to highlight Duet Night Abyss, which seems to have a lot of promise and seems to be trying to innovate the gacha space a little bit and be its own unique thing as well. This game is going to allow for weapon customization like color schemes, etc., and every character in the game is allowed to use whichever weapon they want. And they're also going to implement a gacha system where basically the character is guaranteed no 50-50. What the heck, bro? Hoyoverse, look out, okay? People are innovating in the space. Another content creator by the name of Genazad was able to put out a pretty in-depth look at the game, at least what we have so far. Now, this was a very early look. Like there, it's basically like not even close to being finished yet, so just keep that in mind if you go check out his video, which I will link in the description in case you guys wanted to see more about it, and I really suggest that you go do that because it's a really good video on the situation. He described it as a game that is very reminiscent of a game called Warframe, which I had a lot of time spent in that game, and it is a very fun ride. So if this is a gacha game that tries to emulate what I already feel like is a great looter-shooter style game, this is going to be a banger more than likely. Now, that doesn't guarantee that it is, obviously. It's just been inspired by Warframe, but I do think there is a lot of promise there if they had a similar vision. And you heard me right, I said looter shooter, so there are going to be guns in this game. Imagine your waifu walking around with a revolver or a shotgun or something like that, bro. That sounds sick if you ask me. Now, Duet Night Abyss has a long way to go, and it is still in its very early stages, so I can't really speculate too much on a release date for the game, but they are very active in their Discord if you wanted to go check it out, and definitely check out that video made by Genazad. Now let's get into what is probably the most well-known gacha game in this list, and that is Arknights Endfield, which seems to be like a spiritual successor to Arknights, an already existing well-known gacha game in the scene. This game just had a player testing phase as well, and from what I can grasp, the combat system is not necessarily anything too groundbreaking. It's not going to be anything too difficult either, not like a Wuthering Waves or a Punishing Gray Raven, for example, something that pretty much anybody can get into and enjoy, which something that kind of held back Wuthering Waves and Punishing Gray Raven because the skill requirement is a bit higher than the average gacha game, which might turn some people away. Arknights is seemingly going to be something that just about anybody can get into. And as far as the gacha system is concerned, it does seem like it's going to be a lot more forgiving than, let's say, the Hoyoverse systems would be. I found this post on r/gacha gaming, so, you know, maybe take this with a grain of salt, but from what they're saying here, it seems like there's a 50-50 system having the rate-up character, which is usual, and then 50% having a spook. One 5-star is guaranteed every 10 pull, and this carries over to the next banner. After 65 rolls, the rate-up pulling for a 6-star increases by 5% per roll. 80 rolls guarantees a 6-star, but do not guarantee the rate-up. It's a 50-50, and this carries over to the next banner. 120 rolls guarantees the 6-star rate-up character. Only once per banner, does not carry over to the next banner. Now, I wanted to point out, of course, they have a 5-star and a 6-star system rather than a 4-star and a 5-star system, so just keep that in mind. But if we compare this to Hoyoverse games, for example, the 80 rolls is already earlier than a 90 roll guarantee. But I also want to point out that 120 rolls, if you're doing the math, is less than 160 rolls or 180 rolls, meaning the guarantee to no matter what get the 6-star is much earlier than a Hoyoverse game would be, significantly so. And it also has an earlier pity system as well, and like it says right here, it goes up by 5% per roll. So most of you are probably never even going to see this 120, and many of you are probably going to see it before you even get to the 80. So this is a very promising gacha system. There was a very popular video put up by the likes of Tobro, hopefully I'm saying that right, and they went really in depth on the Arknights Endfield recent test phase that they had. They were even in the alpha, and they go really in depth, so I'll be linking this video in the description as well, so go check this out. And they go really in depth, especially going going over the base. And the home base for Arknights Endfield is probably the most unique aspect of their game that makes it really their own. This is definitely going to be it's practically like a game in itself for all the ADHD kids and all the OCD kids. I don't know, maybe this is an OCD person's nightmare, but this seems like a very, very fun and intricate part of the game as well, and I can't wait to see what they actually do here with Arknights Enfield's home base. At first, people were skeptical of it, but I think people are really coming around to it, and as far as Toboro is concerned, it's one of the best parts of the game, and this will be how you acquire a lot of the loot in the game as well. Now, it looks like we have a little information for a potential release date for Arknights Endfield. I'm sure you're going to hear all about it once we know more, like publicly. However, it is expected to release by Saturday, August 30th, 2025 at the latest, based on a deadline for launch set by China's national press. Now, this is likely, again, another situation where they have a global license and they have to release it by a certain date or they lose that license. However, they did just have a global testing phase, so it's possible they can push the deadline a little bit further. So expect to see this in like the second half of 2025 or potentially sometime in 2026. Based on what we've already seen from the game so far in their testing, it seems like they already have it fairly polished, so expect to see this game probably sooner than some of the others on the list. Now let's get into Azure Promelia, which you might recognize shares a similar name to Azure Lane, an already existing title made by the same studio. Now it's uncertain at this time whether these games will share a storyline or if Azure Promelia is a spiritual successor to Azure Lane. That is all uncertain at this time. However, obviously, we're going to speculate when they share a similar title name like that. Now, Azure Promelia did put out a promotional trailer a while ago, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of the game since then. However, once again, thanks to these global licenses that they have to have that are public, we can expect to see the game by the 25th of January 2025. However, once again, if they have a global testing phase, they're technically able to push that date further, which would take the game into 2026. This seems like one of the titles on this list that will come out the latest, like the furthest away from now. So expect to see more about this game and see if it's promising or worth our time in the future. However, I did want to mention that this game has some uniqueness to it as well. It looks like we're going to be able to ride around in mounts and actually fly around in the world, and it doesn't seem like there's really a whole lot of restriction to that. It could just be some editing trick where we don't really see that it's actually self-driven, but dude, if we can ride around on mounts, that would be so cool. And based on what we see in the trailer, it's possible that you kind of do this sort of like animal farming style thing where you raise up the animals and then potentially ride around on them. At least that's what it seems like based on the trailer, which would be a very fun and unique thing for the gacha gaming sphere as far as the top competitors are concerned. And I think this is what makes Azure Promelia the most promising. It seems like there are some story elements to this game as well that could be promising as well. However, that's yet to be seen. Let's wait until we know more about Azure Promelia before we get too excited about it. I wanted to talk about Neverness to Everness, otherwise known as NTE, not to be confused with NTR, but Rule 34 video is probably going to go hard with this game as well. Some of these models look absolutely insane. Now, this game is going to probably be competing with not Genshin, not, Wuthering Waves, but with Ananta. So that's interesting that these two games have not come out yet it seems like based on the fact that they are very, very reminiscent of like a Grand Theft Auto style gacha game where you're going to be able to ride around in cars. Like you're actually going to be able to get around in cars. And this game is going to, it's already announced, it's already shown to us that you can customize your cars a lot like let's say Needs for Speed Underground or something like Grand Theft Auto. This game looks to show a lot of promise as well. It's already had some testing phases as well. It's still fairly bare bones. It seems like there is some room for improvement, and some of the combat seems very fun and interesting. Maybe not, again, like Punishing Gray Raven or Wuthering Waves sort of style, a little bit more simplistic, but that's not necessarily a bad thing depending on who the target audience is. This game also has a home base that you'll be able to customize, like a high-end, really, really nice. Listen, I know a lot of gacha gamers are kind of like homebodies or neats living at their parents' house, but bro, this looks like you're going to be able to live a fantasy where you have a super-duper high-end home space where you're able to customize it very, very similarly to, again, Grand Theft Auto. I really think that Neverness to Everness and Ananta are going to be able to compete with each other, and that's going to be good for the games overall because they're going to try to push the envelope and make each game better because they're going to try try to beat out their competition, and competition breeds success. The character designs for Neverness to Everness seem really, really good. The environments seem very cool, and the color palettes. Bro, the color palette is probably one of the most intriguing things about this game. The color, the brightness is something that I think we've been really wanting in the gacha gaming scene for a while. Don't get me wrong, Genshin Impact games like that do have a nice color palette. Wuthering Waves was a little bit more gray before they ended up getting player feedback, and they ended up really brightening up the game a lot. But I mean, this is going to be like highlighter colors that we're going to be seeing from Neverness to Everness, and it's going to be really exciting. I think that's going to be one of the unique things about this game, and NTE, for example, is one of the ones I think has a lot of promise. Hopefully they're able to deliver on that, but we'll just have to see once it enters global testing phases and get a little bit further into development. Now, maybe I'm just stupid, maybe it's just Maybelline, but I couldn't really find any promising information on a release date for Neverness to Everness, and I don't want to necessarily speculate any further, but it seems like another one of those games that might have a 2025 release or sometime in 2026. Ananta and Neverness to Everness seem like the most exciting, to me at least, on the surface level from what we've been able to see so far. However, it really just depends on if they're able to deliver on the excitement that they've been able to garner. And it does seem like they're starting to push some of those naysayers out of the way and really get intrigue about their game. However, Azure Premilia does look exciting as well, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of it. Duet Night Abyss is a little bit of a lesser known thing, but if they're able to really improve on what's already been shown so far, they could be a banger as well. I think Arknights Endfield so far shows the most true promise because they had a global testing phase recently that seemed to go over very well. So that's the only one we can really put some weight into because we already know what's coming to us in that game, at least to some degree. So let me know which games you're most excited about, because this was just 5 names. And let me know if there's anything that I didn't mention on this list that you think might be interesting to talk about in the future and take a look at going forward. Anyways, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.